So these ascending tracts and their information, one of the things that's going to happen, the three neurons, because we've got to have the receptor, we've got to have that information to send it to the thalamus, then from the thalamus to the area of the brain that it needs to go to. And then these are what are termed the major ascending tracts. Basically what your text is going to go through and be giving lots of information about, but I'm not requiring you to know that. Just be familiar with their names and the fact that a tract, the name of it, lets you know the origin and the destination. The descending tracts, these are going to be our motor information. Motor, well, that makes you think of something moving. So when we have the sensory information go in, the motor information that comes out is what is going to go to an effector. It's carrying out the effect, the response. So that motor signal is going to travel down the cord. This time, it has an upper motor neuron and a lower motor neuron. Basically, the axon from an upper motor neuron, it's going to lead to its target. So that target could be muscle, could be an organ, could be a gland. So we're going to find that whatever, or I should say, those endings of the lower neuron, that's going to cause it to have the effect. Muscle's going to move, muscle's going to contract. We're going to see that an organ will do something, increase or decrease its speed and so forth. So they are carrying out the effect of the motor information. Once again, we have major descending tracts, just like ascending. Their name lets you know where the origin begins and where we're going to have the ending. So, for example, corticospinal. What we're looking at, spinal, lets us know it's going to the spinal cord. And when we are looking at the cortical region, okay, we're looking at the areas of the brain. So, a couple of things that I put up here for these tracks. In the corticospinal, they're going to decussate. Information gets to cross over. Okay? Tectospinal. Oops, that's a typo. Neck. N-E-C-K. Okay? So that means any type of response ends. It's all right here within the head. It ends at the neck. For the lateral, medial, now reticulospinal, as you go through your reading, you're going to learn that we have an area of the brain called the reticular area, okay? Basically, it's a diffuse, what they call a diffuse webbing, where it looks like these neurons and information do all of this crossing and crisscrossing and so forth, that it begins to look like a spider web in the brain, not anywhere specific, so they termed it reticular. These right here, upper and lower limbs. That's it. All right. The other part about that particular tract, those particular tracts, analgesic, meaning for pain. All right. They have the ability to help stop with the pain. These right here, the lateral medial vestibulospinal. vestibular, vestibular, vestibule. Have you ever heard of that term before? A vestibule? What is it? Okay, have you ever been somewhere where before you actually entered the official building, okay, there was a little entryway that you walked into first? Okay, that's a vestibule. Guess where that's located at in our bodies? In the ear. We have a vestibule in the ear. So this one, look what it does. Body's balance. A person that has inner ear problems, what can happen to them with their balance? They could be like, you know, weaving and moving and everything because it's their inner ear. This area is affected. So this is for helping with our body's balance. Those ascending and descending tracts. Let me see how far I want to go for today. This is a whole lot of what I've already talked about, so we'll talk about this just a little bit. Okay, that spinal nerve, because now that we've talked about the spinal cord, okay, this is now moving to what is going to exit between the vertebrae, the spinal nerve. The spinal nerves, this is how our spinal cord, which is what we've pretty much been talking about all morning, communicates to the rest of the body. The structure of the spinal nerves, when we talk about this, we're referring to the fact that it is axons. So what exits that vertebral column is considered this portion. Okay, so it's going to be these axons, like we had in the title slide, that are going to be in these groupings. The other part about this, do you guys remember how, for these axons, they carry the action potentials? Meaning, they're carrying electrical currents. How is that electricity created? Does anybody remember how or what is needed to generate the electricity that creates that action potential?
Is that like with the difference in ions and passing through the gate creating a voltage?
Exactly. These are based on the ions, the sodiums, the potassiums, calcium a little bit, but the big players, sodium and potassium. And they have that ability to affect those gates that we talked about yesterday, on Tuesday, where we have the voltage gated, okay? And as that takes place on this axon, that voltage, that change in sodiums and potassiums, it passes along the axon and it makes its way to that terminal end where when it occurs, it releases its product, which is the neurotransmitter. Okay, so these axons are carrying those electrical currents. As we continue their movement, as they continue to move around and all over the body, they begin to get a little bit smaller because they're meeting, for example, in skeletal muscle, they're meeting individual fibers, individual muscle cells. So they branch. This is going to be termed my peripheral nervous system, the PNS. So as we have those spinal nerves exit and begin to travel and branch off, okay, it becomes what I know to the periphery of my body as my peripheral nervous system. They're covered in the myelin, which is made by the Schwann cell. The fiber itself is covered in my connective tissue wrapping of endoneurium. Fibers are in bundles called fascicles. Probably remember that from the muscles. The fascicles that are bundled together are wrapped in perineurium. Peri meaning middle. Okay? Fascicles are bundled together for the nerve. For example, that nerve exiting the vertebral column, and that has a wrapping of epi to the outside. So inner, middle, outer. They have that really high metabolic rate, like we were talking about earlier, and they require a high blood supply. The blood flow to the nervous system is huge because they need their nourishment because they hopefully don't stop. This is their structure. As you look at their structure, this would be my spinal nerve that's exiting. That nerve is made up of one axon, axon, bundled together to create a fascicle, to have fascicle, to be wrapped together as the nerve. That goes in to my spinal cord, but this nerve, note what happens. This nerve branches because I get posterior rootlets, anterior rootlets. Why? What has to go in and what has to come out?
Sensory and motor action.
Sensory has to go in, motor has to come out. This is traveling along that nerve. Any questions up to this point?
Yeah. Can you go over the order one more time? So you said there fascicles and then the wrap and the
So if we look here,
yeah,
we got an axon.
Yeah.
Axon. All these little yellow portions are axons. They're wrapped in their endoneurium.
Okay.
So each of these wrapped, a bunch of these together create a fascicle, which is wrapped in my peri. And when I have several of these together to form the nerve, that's wrapped in my epi.
Okay.
To create the nerve. Okay? All right?